With us in studio, Dr. Joe Congeni, Akron Children's Hospital on board with us. And Joe, it's the summer season, but it's a lot of times when the parents are getting the physicals for the young high school athletes.
It's the ideal time, yeah. So everybody's talking about really you should go 6 to 8 weeks. 6 weeks is really the preferred before a season would start because 12 or 15% of kids are going to have something they need to have rechecked. And if you go the day before the season and it takes time to set up the appointments for having things done. So 6 weeks is the preferred. 6 months, if you go too far before, things could change in that period of time. So this is the ideal time. If somebody's playing and we're getting to fall sport, we're about 6 weeks away from starting. So I wanted to talk about today. There are some new guidelines that came out. So just in the last since about the year 2000, there have been 5 different times a group meets with 6 governing bodies medically for pediatrics, family practice, sports medicine, and they come out with a thing called a monograph. We haven't had a new monograph in 5 years, but this one came out in May of 2019, so just last month. And it there are some slight changes, but not a lot of changes in the sports physical. First of all, front and center what they say. I want to be clear on this, and they say it real early in the monograph. The monograph is about 240 pages, and any doctors and nurse practitioners and things that do physicals, you got to get the book. It's very important to have it and that everybody's on the same page. But real early on, they talk about the fact this doesn't replace your regular physical exams that are done by your primary care doctor. The continuity of that, of knowing you and other things, and for vaccines and shots and all that, that doesn't replace it. And the ideal place that this sports physical would be done would be in your primary care doc's office. However, we know a lot of these are done at urgent cares and other places around town, mass physicals at the school.
Right.
And if you're doing that, make sure you still keep up with your primary care physician, your primary care office. There's about 54 questions. They didn't add a lot of questions this year, but there are some on mental health for the first time, on anxiety, depression, suicide issues, but they are they're not required. And so that's kind of interesting, is they made them something that is at the discretion of the person asking the questions. They're not in the 54 that we ask. In the 54, we really like with the questions. That's where we pick up 75% of problems going on in a kid for that year. So they should go over it with the parent. A lot of times, if the parent and the kid are given they'll give different answers. And so the parent and the kid should agree on this. And so it's really asked to be signed off on below the age of 18 by the parent too, so that the parent agrees with the history. The history is most important. But again, being aware of, you don't just go in, get signed off and go home. There's going to be about 15% of kids where we pick something up. That's why we're doing the thing. And this is probably the biggest misconception that's frustrating for primary care providers, is so many people have the expectation, you're just going to sign my form and I go play sport. We're going to pick up things like high blood pressure that need to be checked again, like a shoulder, ankle, knee problem that was still carrying over from last season that needs to be worked on now and rehabbed and things so that you don't go into the season with that problem. Or like the one area that we all worry about the most, hey, I'm going to find something different with your heart that we've never heard before. A certain type of murmur, which is a harsh sound in listening to your heart, that might need to be checked out further. Or episodes of passing out that we can't explain for any other reason. Or problems with heat 2 or 3 times in the last year. Those kinds of things need checked out. That's why we need the 6 weeks. You may need to be sent to and they say it on the form this year, to a cardiologist, or to get a special test called an echo or an EKG, things like that. So it isn't just the kind of thing I'm going to go and it's going to be signed off on. So those are some of the highlights. They did organize it a little bit different, the questions and things like that, but not a whole lot new to add, and that's probably why it took 5 years since our last time that we had a new monograph.
Joe, how long, for example, my son, as you know, plays a spring sport.
Yeah.
If I got him a physical in the next 6 weeks, is that good until next spring?
Good for the entire year, a 12-month period of time. So, yeah, thanks for asking that question, Ray. I mean, that's awesome. And you still got the kids kind of going through the system. So you also asked me before we got on the air of a thing that at Wadsworth and many high schools, there are groups that go around with a thing called a quick look type echo, where they do the heart test. Right now it's not recommended by all the research in the country that every kid that plays sport 20 million, 30 million kids who play sport have this echocardiogram done of the heart. But for certain times, and if parents want to have that test done, a lot of schools had that available. I think you were mentioning to me Wadsworth had that available.
Yeah.
And so they do a quick look echo. The negative to it is, first of all, there aren't that many kids that have some of these heart disorders, but we know that we hear, every year a couple cases of kids, hey, we just didn't know that happened, and, you end up with sudden death. So that's why we have to, at this physical, really listen carefully. Sometimes even then we can't pick these up. So that is one of the things. The bad thing, though, is that we pick up so many kids. There's 20% false positives, and we send kids off to have to get other expensive tests, and they really don't have anything wrong, and even they miss time and other things like that. So the governing bodies looking at this in the area of cardiology and others do not say that it's required that everybody who's going to play sport have these tests done. But for parents that want to go that extra mile and are looking for that, it is available. I know in all the schools, many of the schools in the area, where they'll come to a school and look at that.
And it's an additional cost, and I get that. And we just did it because it was offered, and we said, hey, this could be a nice thing, a preventable thing, and we went ahead and did it. And speaking of costs, I wanted to bring this in. You're involved with a group that is doing some medical exams for some of the families that maybe just can't afford this.
We get asked, to get out to different places and do some of these in the inner city. There's a group, and if you haven't been aware of it, they're awesome. They're called Faithful Servants. They started in Talmadge. They have 4 locations now. We work with Faithful Servants, and they are a medical mission in Akron. And so for all those people who fall through the cracks and don't have money, they do medical care, and now they're up to 4 locations. One of them is in South Akron at the front porch. In the back of the front porch is a beautiful medical facility. A lot of good people in our town put money into this to build a facility that people can go to for medical care. And they always ask us about this time of year. We're going to be there Thursday night doing physicals for kids who have just right now have fallen through the cracks, don't have the ability to get physicals done. And so Thursday night, and again in 2 weeks on Tuesday, we have a couple of physical nights to catch some of those people who just don't have the ability of getting those done.
That's true.
It's called the Front Porch. It's on South Street Mission. They've been doing great work, and the group that oversees this is Faithful Servants.
Hey, before I let you go this morning, Joe, we're 86 today, 86 tomorrow. We're starting to get into that hot, humid time. I also know that there's a lot of students, a lot of people outside getting their runs, doing their exercise and such. Thought maybe you could take a moment about high heat health and certainly some of the dangers and how maybe you can alter your exercising a little bit to either evening or morning or pare it back a little
That's
bit.
exactly what you said is think about timing. Heat of the day is the worst. 10 o'clock through 4 o'clock, to 3 o'clock are going to be the hottest periods of time. So you don't want to be in the heat of the day. You want to hydrate pre, during, and post, especially if you're over an hour. If you're over several hours, remember that sometimes just water alone isn't enough, and we need to have the electrolytes as well, as there have been a few cases in some major races of problems with what's called hyponatremia, a decreased sodium. So when you're over an hour, you're probably looking at wanting to get some electrolytes in there too. But just cut back, and if you're feeling it all faint, if you're feeling it all cramped, those are the first steps. Don't let it get to that last step. The last step is heat stroke. We just had all 30 of our trainers in from our 30 high schools. They kind of, the 1 month off they get is June. They came in and we talked about what you do when somebody's body core temperature gets over 104. That's an emergency, medical emergency. Dunk them in a cool water pool and get that temperature down as quickly as you possibly can if they get to heat stroke. But luckily, the vast majority of these are going to be heat illness, heat cramps. And you're right, the kinds of things that you're talking about with hydration and being smart and listening to your body are all the first steps to
You get
prevent
lightheaded. That's one of the first things, right?
Lightheaded is definitely a sign it's time to stop. You better walk back to where you are. We could be moving down that continuum from heat illness and heat cramps to heat stroke if we're starting to get lightheaded.
So as Joe mentioned, afternoon, evening, if you have to run at noon and maybe you do 4 miles on a real hot day, maybe you do 2.
That's right.
Just take it back a little bit. Be smart.
That's right. Exactly right.
Dr. Joe Congeni, Akron Children's Hospital. Hey, one thing I wanted to bring up too? How about Aaron Galpert, a good friend?
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
what, he gets that Hall of Fame, huh?
Got a chance to be in Cincinnati, and that's one of the good things about being later in a career like I am. I mean, I know you're a young guy with me, but
I am not young, but thank you.
32 years, and Aaron and I were given this little office down at Akron Children's Hospital. They said, hey, make something of this, you two guys. And now, we have like 70 people and cover. So it's grown a lot. But Aaron was by my side for so many years.
Great guy.
And he got inducted into the Hall of Fame at Cincinnati, the Ohio Athletic Trainers Association. They're a great group. They're the hardworking group. I give trainers pat on the back all the time, and Aaron got me through my career.
He's a great guy. So are you. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Ray.
There you go. Dr. Joe Congeni, Akron Children's Hospital. He joins us Wednesdays on the Ray Horner Morning Show.